Well, that was quick. So, about this time yesterday, I released a video talking about how we hadn't heard anything about the drone strike that happened in Kerr County, Texas, during all of the horrific flooding at the beginning of this month. And about 12 hours or so ago, Kerrville City, the ones who originally released the statement talking about a drone striking the helicopter, they released another statement talking about how it was, in fact, a search and rescue authorized drone. Now, this obviously doesn't make anything better because it's still a drone, still hit a helicopter, but it is one of those things that we've got to look at it a couple different ways. On one hand, I understand releasing information to help clear the skies and remind people not to fly drones on emergency situations. But on the other hand, this isn't what happened. This was an official search and rescue drone that was in use. Like I mentioned yesterday, we have to be really careful about the language we use, especially in public information, because that story about a civilian drone operating illegally in controlled airspace made it all the way around the world multiple times, and every last portion of that was false. It was not a civilian drone. It was not operating in illegal airspace. I don't know. It's pretty frustrating to me. So let's go take a look at their statement. All right, so this was released 12 hours ago, City of Kerrville, Texas, City Hall. Drone hit clarification. At the July 23rd joint hearing of the special state, House, and Senate committees investigating this month's deadly floods, testimony clarified that the drone involved in the incident that forced a military helicopter to make an emergency landing July 7th in Kerr County was actually an authorized search and rescue drone. It had flown too high and stalled, contrary to earlier reports that it was an unauthorized private drone. There's a couple different things to unpack there. So the first thing, this meeting happened on July 23rd, and it took a full week to release that information. I don't know. I feel like it would be pretty easy to get this redaction out, because I feel like it would have been pretty easy to get a redaction like this out way sooner. Because if I was operating a search and rescue drone in an area and hit a helicopter, whoever would be in charge of the public information would hopefully be putting out a post saying it was a search and rescue drone first things first, because that's the other thing. You're going to have some pretty good accountability with the drone. I mean, even if, say, I was operating a drone and it had a flyaway issue and it went way up high past a point where I didn't have radio control of it anymore, well, first off, that's where your automatic return to home should factor in. Second off, I feel like I'd probably be able to report that fairly quickly and say, hey, be advised, my drone has had a flyaway. Any manned aircraft in the area, watch out for a drone. And then if they do hit one, I would say, drone had a flyaway. It's not entirely your fault, I guess is what I'm saying. It's a mechanical issue. I recently had a mechanical issue with one of my drones. Mechanical issues happen. Mechanical issues happen on helicopters. Mechanical issues happen on planes. How many horrific in-flight emergencies with helicopters and planes have we seen this year? So it's like, I feel like the accountability for being able to say, yes, we had a search and rescue drone in this area, and this is where the helicopter crashed, or helicopter struck it, rather. It's I feel like 2 and 2 would be easier to put together, with the end game of that being, hey, let's maybe not put out the story about how it was a civilian drone in an unauthorized flight space that did this. So I don't know. I'm nitpicking because, as I mentioned yesterday, I'm worried that stories like the one that were put out at the beginning of this month are going to further damage the relationship that drones have with the public when they are such an incredibly useful tool. So I think it's very important to get stories like this correct. Like I talked about yesterday, that drone strike in Los Angeles during the fires, that was very important news to get out. It was, in fact, a civilian drone operator operating a private drone way out of Part 107 regulations, way out of line, and he should absolutely have the freaking book thrown at him. And I can't remember the exact fines. Let's look it up. Let's see what his fines and everything were. All right, so DroneDJ.com. Hollywood exec pleads guilty to a crashing drone in LA firefighting plane. Peter Tripp Ackerman. Sentencing's been set for June 2nd, so I haven't seen. Wonder what he was sentenced to. Repair costs of at least $65,000 he's got to pay. 150 hours of community service. Yeah, I mean, he got hammered pretty good. I mean, I still think it should be a little bit more for doing something like this, because the way he was operating was so out of bounds. I don't know what education we can do. Well, that's one of the things I try and do on this channel, is educate people on a lot of the rules and regulations that are in place, so that if you're flying your drone at all, maybe you might come here and go like, haha, look at this silly guy making funny videos. But also try to remind people that don't fly beyond visual line of sight, don't fly over 400 feet AGL, don't do this, don't do that. Try and at least keep some of the very basic rules understandable. That's one of the other things I'm curious about this post. It had flown too high, so obviously he must have had a altitude waiver. I'm curious as to what altitude it had. I'm curious as to what altitude he was flying it at, or whether it was a flyaway issue. There's so much I want to know about this case, because like, okay, so what make and model drone was it? Was it an Autel? Was it a DJI? Was it a Skydio? Is that what was the drone that did it? I'm very curious, and this is one of the things that also quite frustrates me out of the story, is the fact that they have once again limited who can comment on this post. I have a lot of questions. I would love to ask a lot more questions about this and figure out what there is more to this story. But in the meantime, at least now we do have closure, I guess, information on what exactly happened. So what do we do about making things a little bit better in the future? So this is one of the reasons why, because I don't mind operating drones in airspace that has helicopters or planes or anything in it. I just basically, if I know there's going to be a helicopter in my airspace, I descend way before I need to. There is nothing wrong with lowering your drone and letting the air traffic go by. And if you have unexpected air traffic in your airspace, well, that is something we really need to work on with better radio communication. So, for instance, we had a pretty big fire over here 2-3-ish weeks or so ago. And while flying, it was night. I was flying visual line of sight. I was flying, had my night beacons on. Everything was above the board. And still had a helicopter with no lights on and not broadcasting ADS-B come out of nowhere. And the first thing I did was dive that drone towards the ground, get it away from the airspace, get it down, get it out, try and clear the airspace until I could figure out what the hell was going on. So that's where there needs to be better framework put in place, I guess, or something to help with communication between drones and aircraft. And I know remote ID is one of those things that's kind of, making it better so at least some people can see the drone in the air. I don't know. I would like to see, I don't know how hard it would be. I would love to see every drone capable of broadcasting ADS-B. I feel like that would go a long ways to kind of integrating them into the national airspace, as well as self-reporting, I guess, not in like a bad way, but in like letting know. Because like if I have my drone in the air, I'm not trying to hide from anything. I would prefer everyone know that my drone is in the air most of the time, I guess, because I don't want an in-flight emergency like what we saw here in Kerrville. I don't know. So I think getting drones to have some sort of better ADSB module than remote ID, because remote ID, like I can't even get remote ID to show up like for my drones. Like I put them in the air, it's very clearly broadcasting it, and I can't find it with any of like the apps they recommend, which is a little frustrating. But hey, what do I know? I'm not the most technological savvy person in the world. So, quick addendum, as I am in the middle of editing this video right now. My buddy Brian sends me a link to this news article from the original reporting, where it talks about the city council members and city manager and assistant city manager were some of the people that were on the helicopter, and they were flying at 250 feet altitude, which is well within the legal flight limit for drones. Drones, if you don't know, fly at a maximum of 400 feet above ground level without a waiver. So I just wanted to add that addendum in really quickly, that the drone was also operating at clearly demarcated, clearly anyone who knows anything about drones would know that 250 feet altitude is a perfectly safe altitude to be flying at. So this further goes to show that, especially when you're working with drones and manned aircraft in an area, have that nice little buffer zone between where the drones are operating and where the manned aircraft are operating. So helicopter, if the new drones were in the area, just probably don't go below 400 feet. Yes, obviously it still comes down to the drone operator to give the right of way for helicopters and whatnot to operate in the area. Manned aircraft, we always give the right of way to manned aircraft. But this is why we really need better communication, especially from like the air ops level, to say, hey, all manned aircraft stay above 400 feet AGL, and all unmanned aircraft stay below like 350. So that way you have like a really nice buffer zone. Even on like a search here where we have like 2 unmanned aircraft, if I'm running the scene, or even if I'm not, I'm just like coordinating with whoever else is running a drone, I want to keep a minimum of 50 feet of airspace between us. Vertical airspace. Sorry, I want to keep a minimum of like 50 vertical airspace between us just to account for anything. And if we have manned aircraft in the area, oh, absolutely way more than 50. So that's where like this at 250 feet, helicopter, if it had been flying above 400 feet, you would have had 150 feet of airspace in between the drone and the helicopter. So I just thrown that in there because when you read that, oh, the drone was flying too high, without knowing the air ops or what they were trying to accomplish there and what rules and regs they set for the people operating there, the drone was absolutely not operating way higher than it should have been. So I just had to throw that addendum in there. Thanks, Brian, for sending this to me during the editing process so I can make sure I include this. So we really need to work on better communication between drones and aircraft. I don't know if they had some sort of air ops or air coordinator on this whole search and everything, because I wasn't there. That's the other thing, is like I want to make sure like I'm not trying to backseat quarterback, Monday morning quarterback. That's the term. Monday morning quarterback this whole search, because this has been such a tragedy that has been laid on Texas recently. Obviously, my heart goes out to everyone there. I wish I could have come and helped in some way, because holy smokes, that's just who I am. I want to come help, but it's awful. I can't imagine anything like this. Like, we get terrible fires here, but this whole flood has just been way more than anything I've seen here. But at least in terms of, loss of life and whatnot. That's why I just want to be clear. Like, I am not trying to criticize the response to this at all. Just as someone who's in the drone industry and is worried about the future of drones and wants to see drones used for the best possible outcomes on any sort of emergency situation, I just want to make sure we don't jump to conclusions when a drone accident happens and immediately start blaming it on civilians operating unauthorized drones in unauthorized areas and leading to further crackdowns on regulations for these. But I also want to make sure that, like in this case, where it was an authorized search and rescue drone, we prevent anything like this from happening again. That's just what I'm trying to kind of make the gist of. So, anyways, glad we got information. Glad we got clarification. I'm not going to take credit for my voice and the 40 views yesterday's video got being the reason we suddenly get clarification. But regardless, it's nice to have it. So, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.